Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome into the Gramlich and Mac Lane podcast, presented by our wonderful friends over at Ingles, episode 282, and we have more spring games to discuss. We did not forget about the rest of these teams, Mac. Some people may have thought, okay, you put out a spring game recap episode on Monday. Where was Florida State? Where was Pitt? Where was Miami? We got you covered today.
Come on. That's right. We were strategic. We had to break it up. We couldn't just, put the top end of the league in one episode. We had to spread it out, spread the love, if you will, KG. So excited to jump into these teams. Like you said, it felt like on Saturday, just the whole world was playing their spring games. Like that's what happened. So I think, it was super fun to bounce around. It felt like a Saturday, normal Saturday where you're watching so many different games at once. But excited to break all these down today.
Definitely. We will hit on, just to set the stage for our listeners here, Florida State, Pitt, NC State, Miami, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse plays this Friday. So we talked about Louisville and Duke on Monday. Syracuse, Louisville, and Duke will all play this coming weekend. We're not going to have time to recap those because we've got NFL draft talk next week, Mac. And it's getting serious. The draft, which we've been interviewing all these guys. If you missed our interviews with Brian Brzee and Trenton Simpson and Kalijah Cansey and just all these different dudes, Josh Downs, go check them out on our podcast page, on our YouTube page. Make sure you're up to date because I'm excited. And we are going to have Jordan Reed, ESPN NFL analyst, on Monday. I thought that was one of our better episodes. I learned so much from him. His breakdowns, his comps for different players was so interesting. So I am ready, Mac, for NFL draft week next week.
That's right, KG. And you know who's helping me get ready for draft week? Our great friends over at Ingles. Of course, I cannot wait. Listen, the draft it's one of those things where you got to have a watch party. You got to see where your guys go. You got to celebrate these young men that you've been covering and just have been cheering for so long. So go to your local Ingles, get whatever you want. KG, I feel like you're going to have your veggie plate, but I also think, are you like a big buffalo chicken dip type of girl? Like what's your go-to dip?
Mac, we always joke about how we read each other's minds. I literally was about to talk about buffalo chicken dip. Like that is freaky how that happens. We've known each other for way too long. But yes, I think it's a balance. Life's a balance.
That's right.
You got to have your veggie platter. I love a good veggie platter. But you also need to have your buffalo chicken dip. And here's where it can get interesting, Mac. You dip the veggies in the buffalo chicken dip. And then you don't feel as bad about yourself.
Sure.
Because you're like, hey, I'm dipping a cucumber in this buffalo chicken dip. And so you're good. You're not even getting the calories from the chip. So that's what Ingles has all that for you to get ready. And I know we're still a ways away from football season. I like to treat the NFL draft as a little bit of kind of a spring tailgate situation from a food perspective.
That's right.
Maybe, get a little crazy. Try something new. Try the cucumber and the buffalo chicken dip. You obviously are going to go back to your old staples when you get to football season, but this is the time to be a little wild, Mac.
That's right.
NFL draft.
You can test the water there. Again, we talk about this all the time, but the array of organics, great meat, that quality, that grade A stuff that they have. Let's get a little weird this NFL draft season. You got 3 days where you can test some recipes out, get it going. We'll be sharing ours on social media. So just check it out. Go to your local Ingles and get anything you need for some draft watch party.
At Ingles, we're proud to work with hundreds of local farms and businesses in the communities we call home. Not only does it ensure that you get top quality, fresh items for your family table, it's a way for us to support the amazing individuals who pour their heart and soul into delivering the very best they can do. Quality, freshness, community, it's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
All right, Mac, time to dive into the spring games. Let's start with Florida State, who had a spring showcase. Not really a game. I watched a good part of it. I couldn't find stats, though. So it's a spring showcase situation, and Jordan Travis really didn't play that much. Trey Benson didn't. Johnny Wilson did not play at all. So limited reps for some of these superstars. And I think for both Florida State and Pitt specifically, these were the games where we learned the least, but we also don't need to know that much. It feels like we know what we're getting. I think the biggest thing with Florida State, and EJ Manuel's on the call that game, and he did a great job. It just felt like the swag, the athletes, the dudes were out there. And that's what you want to see when you go to a spring showcase for Florida State.
That's the biggest thing for me, KG, is I just refer back to a handful of years ago, and I'm looking at this FSU team, and I'm just like, who are these guys? This is not what Florida State is supposed to look like. And
not
now,
what you played against.
Yeah, heck no. And I wish. And now, I mean, they're back. They're back to having these freaky guys, having first-round draft picks. You're looking around the team. You're like, there's one. There's another. This could be one. And, I think that is the most important thing that, people gathered from this spring on top of, similar to Clemson. It's going to be a very different looking FSU team come that LSU game, right? Like all the players are going to be ready, the scheme, all these different things are going to show out, even though it's the same. And we've seen a lot of what FSU wants to do. That for me is nobody got hurt. Everybody's feeling good. We got a nice little game in. It's on TV. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a little break and then get to summer ball. So for me, KG, I think when you look at that, exactly what you said, we didn't go into this game expecting to learn anything really new. I mean, we kind of know what FSU is. The biggest question mark for them going into this season is how do you handle all this expectation?
Yeah.
How do you handle all this pressure? How do you handle the target on your back? And when we get to ACC Media Day and we're all said and done, are you going to be voted the favorite? That's a whole new world of pressure and something they haven't dealt with in a long time. And these guys, nobody on this roster has dealt with that. So they're going to have to figure that out. I know the coaches are in place. I know the stars are in place. The guys that have been there, done that I think that they can handle it very well. But that's going to be the fun thing to watch all year long.
Oh, it is. And I saw Jordan Travis post-game. One of his quotes after the spring game was that his time at Florida State has been a roller coaster,
Sure.
which I think is a great analogy because you think 2 years ago they started 0-4.
Right.
Like he has literally seen it all. He has been booed off the field. He has lost to what was that?
Jacksonville State.
Who did they lose to? Jacksonville State.
Crazy.
But then you flip it around and they have the kind of season they've had this year. And honestly, this coming into 2023, this could go down as one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history.
Yeah.
When you talk about being there with a lot of the same players, and specifically Jordan Travis at quarterback.
Yeah.
Where he's your quarterback. I know they were switching off a little bit with Mackenzie Milton that year, but you go from a season where you start 0-4 and then you finish your career perhaps making the playoff. That would truly be one of the greatest turnarounds we've ever seen. And again, that kind of statement just adds to the hype with this Florida State team, Mac. Just adds to it.
It does. It really does. And again, I think, this summer after the great spring ball, the things that you want to do, continue to develop guys, continue to put, these athletes, these student athletes in positions to keep growing. Now, there's different rules from when, you and I were in school because the coaches can be out there a little bit. It's not
There are no rules anymore.
There's no rules. The one rule is there's no rules. So a little bit different where they're going to have that, further development, because back in my day, we had to do it ourselves. So I am excited for that. But again, just looking at this team, and if they can stay healthy, look out. I can't wait to see Florida State and what they're going to be this year.
The one big takeaway, I think, was that Tate Rodemaker looked really good at QB2.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, it shouldn't matter this year. Of course,
Right.
knock on wood if you're a Florida State fan when it comes to injuries. But for next year, that could be really interesting. And then A.J. Duffy was in there, too. They've got 4 guys at Florida State.
Yeah.
They've got some depth there at QB. And so I think seeing Tate Rodemaker look really good in that showcase is a good sign for FSU.
No question about it. And, I mean, just the continual flames on the recruiting trail. They just flipped 5-star tight end, stole them from Georgia, get them to come to FSU. I mean, that's a Georgia team that just won back-to-back national championships, and they're stealing tight ends which they've produced. It breaks our heart. Who's produced unbelievable tight ends, and now you're seeing, okay, this is remnants. This is what we think this FSU team can be. So, KG, I'm like I said, time and time again, I'm excited to see this team.
FSU fans, you're going to want to listen to our Stanford Steve episode coming out on May.
I think you're going to like it. I
think it's May 8th. I think that's right. I hope that's right. Let's see. Hopefully.
It's close. It's in May, early May. First guest of the summer series.
I'm not sure if I was supposed to say that, but here we are.
Breaking news.
Let's get to
talking about giving away hints.
Yeah, normally it's
KG always attacks me, and our biggest summer guest, she just throws it out there for y'all. It's crazy. Crazy in these streets.
Normally it's back. We'll see. We'll see who's really listening to every word of the pod. Okay, let's talk Pitt Panthers here, Mac. We did not see Phil Dracovic for much of the game. He was 5 for 7 for 51 yards. I mean, dude is, he's like 24 years old. He's had a lot of mileage in terms of he was sacked a lot at Boston College, so it's probably good. Keep him healthy. Keep him on the sidelines a little bit. But everyone's saying he had a great spring, and of course, he's the guy. You saw some Rodney Hammond Jr. He had a kickoff return, which was cool to see. I mean, this Pitt team, they returned 13 starters. They returned 50 lettermen from last season's Sun Bowl champion team. Yep. So, again, you didn't find out much, but I thought there was really good energy in that game. A lot of young guys got to play. And maybe the biggest thing, Mac, Penn State transfer quarterback Christian Veilleux looked really good. Now, again, just a spring game.
Right.
It's Jerk's team. But I think you have your future guy. And that's probably why Pitt did this in many respects. You bring in Jerk for 1 year, and then you're going to go to Veilleux after him. I feel like that plan is coming to light right now at Pitt.
And it makes sense because, we've seen, Jerk be in that offense. He's been with Signetti. He understands it. So that's going to only help Christian, develop faster, get the offense, be under the tutelage, and then be ready if, whatever happens. We have not seen Phil Dracovic go through a full season unscathed. And so, Christian has to be ready.
True.
And it looks like after this game that he's a more than ready option to go and can produce and can really move, the offense. I thought it was great to see Rodney Hammond. I mean, that dude is just freaky. I don't think there's going to be any drop off there. Now, it's hard to replace Izzy Abanikanda and the things that he can do. But again, remember how good Rodney was when he was the guy. He ran out there first, for Pitt this last season, and then he got hurt, for a handful of weeks there. So excited to see that, KG. This defense is just going to be, business as usual. Those guys just dominate. They're so fun to watch. The position that they put their defensive backs in, don't come to Pitt if you don't want to play man-to-man because you're going to be on an island a lot. And those werewolves up front, seeing them go and hunt. The one thing that I really want to hit home for Pittsburgh, and we'll do this throughout the preseason, these guys have the second most ACC wins since we moved to the college football playoff. I'm guilty of this. We do not give them enough credit with Clemson, being up there as this dominant force that's been in the league, and they've won a championship. They're the only ones with the Tigers and maybe Florida State back in 14, surely, that have gotten that done, in this era. So for me in Pittsburgh, I give them the benefit of the doubt because of the coaching staff, the defense. I know what they're going to be, but it needs to be even more of that because of their production, because of the things that they've been able to do. They just win at the end of the day. And so it's going to be fascinating to see. Again, we both think Florida State, Clemson, can Pittsburgh wreck that party and say, hold on now, wait just a second.
I think it's very possible. Pitt is going to be very good this year. Yeah. And we say it all the time. So I know our listeners are tired of hearing it. Well, the Pitt listeners are not. But nationally, people need to understand. And I think, Pitt will get its chance to prove itself early with some of those non-conference games. Yep. Last year, if they had been able to beat Tennessee, which they almost did, and they had injuries galore, that would have been huge. And we talked about that. You got to win those out-of-conference games. But I'm excited about Pitt because not only do you have enough coming back offensively, even though you lose a guy like Abanikanda, I know that Coach Narduzzi is excited about those wide receivers. You're still going to be fine at wide receiver. The defense is going to be really salty. And this is something that we talked about with Clemson too. You have a bunch of young guys coming in to replace these old heads who've been there forever, who are all going to be drafted next week. But you almost could have a different level of hunger with this Pitt defense. Because I saw some people talking, some Pitt guys. So the Pitt defense is literally talking trash to each other in the media about whether they should be talking more about their D-line or their secondary. I mean, they're literally going after each other. I saw it after the spring game. They're saying, okay, yeah, the QB killer, new era, whatever, but we've got 6-7 DBs that we feel good about. So I love that, Mac. I think Pitt is, they're going to be really good. They are.
You know who loves that more? Narduzzi. He loves it. Let that defense
You think
speak.
Narduzzi's like, guys, can we chill a little bit?
Right. He's saying, hey, guys, we all know we're good. Let's go play. But, yeah, I mean, he's going to have another super quality, defense here. And just seeing if they can keep Jerk healthy and just what that offense could look like, I think it's going to be very balanced. I think you're legitimately going to see 50-50, 60-40, running the ball and passing it. And so at the end of the day, when you have a defense like that can just literally take the life away from an opposing offense, and you can give any solution you want on offense, look out. This team, they're going to be fun to watch. Can they stay healthy? Can they get it all going? That'll be the biggest thing.
Those are our two teams, I would say, with the least question marks. Let's get to a team that I think has some question marks, some legitimate question marks, and that's NC State. Now, I want to say this. NC State played their spring game 2 weeks ago, that Easter weekend, where that Saturday was literally miserable.
Monsoon. Yeah, it was awful.
They played in terrible weather, so it's hard to judge some of these stats because the weather was just really, really bad. And, of course, with the weather and the rain, the defense showed out. The defense forced a lot of turnovers. You had some dropped passes. You had some fumbles. You had some picks, etc. What everyone's wondering was the quarterback competition, I believe. Believe it's a competition, at least from what we're seeing, between Brennan Armstrong and MJ Morris. Brennan Armstrong played the vast majority of the first half. MJ Morris played the second half. And MJ Morris had a 62-yard touchdown screen pass. He was like 3 for 4 in the first half. I couldn't find his complete stats. Brennan Armstrong was 14 of 28 for 127 and 2 picks.
It's tough.
Again, the weather was awful. Give me your April thoughts on the NC State quarterback situation.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a competition. KG, I think that
Brennan went out there first.
Yeah, I think they brought in Brennan for a reason, and I think number one because he's a very good player. We remember a couple of years ago him just going nuts, 4,500 passing yards, 1 billion TDs, running the football. It feels so
long ago, though.
It really does. I mean,
because of last year.
Yeah, it feels so long ago, and can he get back to that? We'll see. But I think that on top of understanding the offense, having been with Coach Robert and I, and understanding the not just the terminology, but the thought process behind it all, I think that is going to be so good for MJ Morris and for a guy to be able to learn with him who is clearly talented. We saw last year and the things that he was able to do. If he can just sit, and learn from this guy, and maybe he surpasses him by summer. I'm not sure, but I know they brought in Brennan for a reason. And, to see that performance, surely that probably throws out more question marks than answers for, fans. But from a coach perspective, remember, they had 15 days where they saw what they needed to see and to feel comfortable with Brennan running out first and going through the meetings and going through all the stuff. So it is a tough thing because similar to Cade Klubnik and Clemson, we didn't see those other 15 days. We just happened to see the one that was on TV and there was a couple of picks thrown and you're just like, what are we doing? What is this?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think, probably a different looking team, certainly defensively with health and keeping guys out for NC State. But I think this is going to be a gritty team. I really do. The biggest thing for me is can NC State run the football? That's what we've got to see because for 3 years, I think now,
it's been a minute.
They haven't. And even a couple of years ago where they had that great offensive line, 2 really good running backs, they still couldn't run it. When they needed it most, couldn't get it done. And so that's going to be the biggest question mark for me. You're obviously losing, 2, I'll say generational for NC State linebackers with Isaiah Moore and big Drake Thomas. So, seeing those guys leave, thank goodness Peyton stayed. There's obviously young guys behind them that have played, and I know Coach feels really good about, but can they elevate to that level? We will see. Those are 2 very, very good players that left that meant everything, to this defense and to this coaching staff. So those are a couple of question marks that I surely will be looking out for, all summer to hear who's developing and in fall camp, who's rising up. And then, of course, once we kick it off and start playing some games.
Yeah, I think NC State is truly a really interesting situation to monitor in the offseason and as we get into the regular season because MJ Morris is not completely unproven. I mean,
Right.
you know what he can do to a certain extent. So if Brennan Armstrong goes out there and in the first half of a game, probably not the UConn game to start, which again, love that scheduling NC State. But if he's 14 of 28 and 2 picks in the first half, do we see MJ Morris in a second half? I don't know. I think that's going to be the huge question mark.
Sure.
And I will say too, Mac, I think Brennan and MJ are both more mobile than Devin Leary. Devin Leary wasn't necessarily a statue, but he wasn't as mobile. So that can help the run game a little bit, especially MJ Morris. That might be something they want to look at. But yeah, I do think Brennan's the guy. He's going to get the start to start the year for sure. But with how erratic, and I think erratic is the word.
Yeah.
With how erratic he was last year, if he's out there and he throws 2 picks in the first half, do we see MJ Morris? I think that's the question.
Yeah. And again, I think it is also – we do not know. I do think it's also fair to point out that his receivers led the world in drops. Like he had no help, from guys that a year ago were exceptional. So that'll be interesting. Just who steps up from a skill position, from wide receiver position to guys that are reliable and that can make big plays down the field.
All right, I want to talk about Miami. Miami, another very intriguing team this spring and as we head into the fall. And Mario Cristobal said this after their spring game. It was a 70-play live scrimmage, and in the second half they were thud on defense and didn't really do much. He said, "There's progress, but still ways to go." And then he added this: "Our roster could look significantly different when we start camp in the fall." So what exactly does that mean? Obviously, there's some allusions to the transfer portal there. The portal closes on April 30th, so you got to be ready for that. We did see Tyler Van Dyke look a lot more comfortable in this new offense. In the spring game, he was 13 of 19 for 184 and a touchdown, which is very solid. That's what you want to see from TVD. He's got Restrepo back. That's his security blanket. They played with a lot more tempo, which was really good to see. But Mac, I mean, what do you think of that quote from our guy Mario?
I don't know. I mean, it's the new world that we live in.
Just putting guys on notice, like, hey,
like
you're not technically supposed to do that.
I don't know the point. I don't know I don't know the point of, is it because we're kicking guys out, or is it we have room and we're going to go get some guys in the portal? I don't know.
Hopefully number 2.
I hope, because it's just weird. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a weird
quote
vibe
to give after your spring game.
Yeah, and we keep hearing stuff like that.
Since
he's been there,
like that.
Since he when will it be? I don't know. Like you're winning natties every year, then it's like, oh yeah, we're okay now. Like we're good. I don't know. So we'll see. I stand the same on Miami. Like there's not much that's going to change my mind outside of seeing it in the fall. Just what can you be? What can you do? There was so much excitement, so much belief. Especially what we saw the year before, like with TVD and going nuts, and somehow they messed it up. And, you take a guy that is that good and you just make him look pedestrian. And now there were games towards the end of the year or the middle of the year, wherever it was, where they were slinging it around and really started to, look like shades of old, and then injuries and he goes out for the rest of the season. So, I just don't know, KG, what to expect from those guys. And especially hearing coach doesn't even like what his team looks like. I mean, why would I be confident in you at all? Who knows?
Fair point. I do think it's a good sign that TVD looked comfortable in this spring game.
It's practice.
And no, I know, but it feels like with this new offense, they are going to try to cater more to Tyler Van Dyke's skill set.
Which they should.
What you should do. He's a very, very talented guy, and I'm glad he's still there.
Yeah.
I wanted to add this little nugget, just because I know we had a guy on like Kalijah Kancey who's from the Miami area.
Yeah.
And obviously Miami needs to recruit Miami. They know that. It's been a whole thing forever. Freshman D lineman Ruben Bain, he had 3 sacks in this spring game, okay? This is what blew me away, though, Mac. I read this about him. He won 4 consecutive state titles at Miami Central. He had 77 sacks in his high school career.
What?
I need to see film.
Hold on, I'm doing some quick math here.
77 sacks.
This dude had 20 sacks a season.
No,
And
I don't
honestly,
it says he won 4 consecutive, so he played as a freshman, I guess.
right. So that probably means he probably had a handful his freshman year.
Yeah, but
that
then
means
he had
might
a
have had like 30
season.
sacks
Yeah.
season.
We'll find some film.
I will also say this about Bain. EJ Manuel sent a text after that game and said, Ruben Bain is the real deal.
There you go.
So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe plays into, maybe coach was talking about offensive line. And he's like, these guys are obviously terrible. A freshman comes in here and does this. I'm just kidding. But he's raised some eyebrows. This young man, we have 2 in the ACC so far. There might be more that emerge. Woods, Bain, that are like, people are jacked up about. People are very excited to see those young defensive linemen.
I don't care if you're playing against the dudes that Zion Williamson was dunking on in high school. If you have 77 sacks in your high school career, I am intrigued.
It's like, hey, you remember Haba, those highlights that you found, just throwing guys out of the way, smacking the ball out of the air.
Oh, man. I got to go look up this.
I think there's a little more talent in Miami than that, but we'll see.
Exactly. It's not 1A private school ball.
That's right.
Okay, let's transition to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Okay. Let's talk about Virginia and Virginia Tech. We know, of course, it was a very emotional spring game and day for Virginia. It looks like it went really well. It was good to just get back on the football field, and I know they honored the victims and of the tragedy. Mike Hollins, again, we talked about this a little bit in one of our spring episodes. He was one of the guys that was shot. He's back. He was fully practicing in spring ball. He got the first carry of the game, which was really cool. He scored a touchdown. You just love to see that, Mac. That's so cool for Virginia. And when I was watching some of the highlights from this game, I thought Virginia looked good. It looked like they had some new energy with what they were doing. And of course, we can talk quarterbacks here, Mac. But I just thought what they did with Mike Hollins was really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing that he survived. Amazing. I mean, the things that he did, and ran back on to help, and all these different things. I mean, it's again such a travesty, and the way that they honored those young men, and will continue forever. Throughout the year specifically, we'll see a bunch of different things, which is going to be amazing to watch that, and beautiful to celebrate them and continue their lives, even though they're lost, here and remembering them. But, looking at Virginia, I agree with you. That juice and that excitement to get back on the field, their season, was ripped away from them to end it.
Didn't play their rivalry game.
No, didn't get a finish, the year there. And I know that, sports, football particular, it just brings people together, at least for moments and for hours at a time. Like, it takes everything else away, and you can just be free, and you can go play, a game that you love, with things that, we dealt with that were minute and, nothing compared to this. I can only imagine just, the freedom that they had on that field for practices for this game, and then to celebrate their brothers and to keep honoring them. So, like you said, a lot of juice, a lot of excitement, good to see. Just the recruiting and getting some transfer portals. Again, another team that could look different, at the end of this, kind of transfer portal era. And then when they start camp and fill in spots and different things like that. That is, the good thing with kind of this world that we're in for a team like Virginia, who not only was, just, really hit by guys leaving, but also just not, necessarily being able to acquire, great high school talent right now yet. You can go get guys who need another chance, who need a new opportunity, who need to see a grass is greener type thing. And man, you've got a really big roster right away. So that'll be fascinating, KG, just to see them moving on and into the summer. What does this team add, or even if guys leave, what do they look like coming into the fall?
And I think you can already feel more of an emphasis on the run game at Virginia.
For sure.
Go see Des Kitching says that this is one of the deepest running back rooms he's ever coached. You got a lot of exciting prospects there. And let's just say this. I never felt like – I feel like we tried to make it a fit, and Tony Elliott tried, and Brennan Armstrong tried. But Brennan Armstrong and Tony Elliott, to me, never fit. I don't think Armstrong fit what Tony Elliott had envisioned.
Yeah.
And, of course, you're going to do your best with the guy that you have, your return
Right.
from year one.
Yeah.
When you look at these quarterbacks he has now, Tony Muskett, who's the Monmouth transfer, he looked very good, 11 of 14 for 149 and a touchdown. He went out there first. It seems like he's the guy. Freshman QB Anthony Calandria looked good, though, Mac. He was 18 of 29 for 218 and a touchdown. He brought some of that juice, some of that youthful energy.
Yep.
Jay Woolfolk didn't play in the game because he's playing baseball and is a really good baseball player for Virginia. I don't know what's going to happen there. He's another guy that they're having in the quarterback competition.
Right.
But they've got some options there. And it just feels like this team looks a little more like Tony Elliott, a Tony Elliott team would.
Yeah, and I think that starts with the run game, like you said. And when you bring in a guy like Kobe Pace, who was a fantastic player at Clemson, maybe he steps up and this is his show. This is his backfield, and he's the starter. And, we'll see just how quickly can he grasp the offense. But as we all know, at any level of football nowadays, it starts and ends with the quarterback position. Do you have a guy that can not only manage the game, but make plays, make good decisions, not turn the ball over? That will be key. And if you do, you feel really good about it. Now, if you can take it a step further and that, quarterback is a guy and can really make plays for you, then you've got a shot. So look out. So it is good to see some guys who are fighting, who are competing, who are playing at a high level. And, ultimately, where does Virginia land? We'll come to find. So I think the ideal, kind of situation is a guy that can use his legs and, of course, his arm. I don't think anytime in this modern day of football, you can't just be a statue anymore and play that position. So I'm very intrigued to see, KG, who wins it out and gets that spot.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting quarterback competition is down the road at Virginia Tech with Grant Wells. You've got the Baylor transfer, Kyron Drones, and then you've got this interesting freshman at Virginia Tech named Pop Watson, who was really exciting in the spring game. It feels like, it's not – I feel like the competition, at least from what I was reading, is still very much Wells and Drones. Even though Drones did throw 2 picks, Wells looked really kind of like we expected, just solid in that game. But I thought Pop Watson was very interesting, showing some life there. And – Pop Watson is an amazing name. I mean, come on. So I think, you really do have QB competitions at Virginia and Virginia Tech, but the key there is that you're bringing in some new life. You're bringing in some new talent at both places where you have legitimate competition. You're not just going to settle for whoever you have on your roster because, look, this is year one for both of these guys, both of these head coaches. You kind of have to settle with what you got, but it feels like they both did a good job of bringing in some talent. We'll see how that comes to fruition with both teams.
Yeah, and similarly, with needing a guy, like just quarterback can change everything. And Grant Wells, unfortunately, just couldn't make enough plays and turn the ball over a bunch a year ago and, still was their best option. So now you go and get some other guys in. You have a freshman, you get a transfer, and ultimately, does that competition make Grant better, or does someone surpass him?
Right.
And we feel good about them, kind of being the guy there. So similar to Virginia, kind of like what Coach Cristobal said, that they just have to redo their roster. When I went there, for practice during the season, just small, not what I'm used to seeing. You're used to seeing really long, lengthy, athletic, linebackers, safeties, things of that nature, defensive linemen. And that just wasn't the case. So this is an overhaul. Everyone understands that. The things that they're going to have to do, the attrition that they were faced with these last couple of years. I mean, guys have been leaving Virginia Tech right and left, in the transfer portal. Right. I mean, my goodness, still. It just breaks my heart. Good for Hendon, though. So with that all said, just who can that team be? And can they continue to recruit in the state of Virginia? Can they put a fence around it, both these teams, and keep the talent? That will be when Virginia Tech's back competing for championships, when they keep guys in the state where guys say, I want to play for Virginia, I want to play for Virginia Tech, and change something. But until then, it's going to be an uphill battle for them.
And the ACC needs it. They
Facts.
need it, especially with Virginia Tech. Okay, the last one, Mac, they play on Friday, Syracuse. So we don't know much at this point. We know they've had a little bit of an overhaul, offensive coordinator, different things, but Garrett Schrader's back. Aronde Gadsden Jr. is back. That's what you want to see. Marlo Wax is back, going to be the leader of that defense. The big question is replacing Sean Tucker and what do they do there? But Garrett Schrader, to have him back for another year, if you can keep him healthy, that's the key. And Arante Gadsden, he's a superstar.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you'll see of these guys in the spring game, but you definitely have some pieces to build around.
No, I don't think there's any doubt there. And you know, a young coach, you know, getting their opportunity to step up and be coordinator quarterback coach to now coordinator, and a guy that's been around with Coach and I for quite some time now and is familiar with Schrader, familiar with this offense. So, you know, should be relatively smooth transition there. And again, I think it comes down to Schrader and Gadsden. You know, what can those two guys do? How special can they be? But also who steps up, you know, on offense as well, because you know, it kind of started with spreading the love around, and then we really dialed in on Gadsden because he was just such a great playmaker and really did things happen. But also those defenses dialed in. And when they take that away, what's the answer? Where are you going with the football? How are you getting it out quicker? You know, do you have those answers where you see a box and one, if you will, from the basketball side, and there's safety help over the top, or a linebacker who's cheating the slant route? You know, what can you do to have answers for that? That will be very interesting to see, because I think the growth, and when you have a quarterback like Schrader with all the improvement that we saw, if he can stay healthy, you know, look out. And that's the name of the game. You know, a lot of these quarterbacks, we can say that. Defense, you know, you're losing a lot of talent. You're losing, you know, that core linebacker group that has been there for so long. And, you know, when I look at them and the things that they accomplished and got that team, you know, back to you know, bowl game, my goodness, that was such a huge thing for them. How can they pick up on that momentum? How can they keep it going? That will be interesting to see, KG.
Lots of older, not trying to call them old, older quarterbacks in this episode, this group that we've talked about, that I think we're all excited to see another year in the ACC, but need to stay healthy as well. And Mac, that's the spring. Spring ball is done. Check it off. We are now heading into the official NFL draft week. So we're going to have Jordan Reed on next week. Can't wait. And then it's summertime.
Let's go.
So, yes, it's been a fun spring. I think we've been able to really talk about the spring ball in a different way this year. And yeah, it's still spring. It's just spring ball, but you can learn some things. And I hope we did, Mac. I hope we
That's
did.
right. That's right. We appreciate you guys coming along this journey with us. Nice little exclamation point here, but it's NFL draft week, baby. Let's go. Fun time. We get to see, you know, where these guys end up and kind of put the final, you know, chapters on their collegiate career as they move pro. And it'll be fun to celebrate, you know, those young men next week. And we'll talk a little preview, and then we'll wrap it up the following Monday and kind of give you our thoughts on where these guys ended up and what kind of fits and things they can make. But that's it from us. Thank you guys for tuning in. Another great episode of Gramlich and Mac Lane, presented by our great friends over at Ingles. If you're not on YouTube, come on, guys. We need you over here. Subscribe, jump in the comments, watch us, see you, see us. That's what we want to see there. And also go over to Apple Podcasts, the OGs, rate, review, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate that. But until next time, we'll see y'all.